The lobby security camera footage would later show exactly what happened at 11:42 a.m. on March 17, 2023, at the Grandview Plaza Hotel in downtown Chicago. A well-dressed black man in his early 50s sat in one of the leather armchairs near the fireplace, his leather briefcase beside him, checking his phone. He wore a charcoal gray suit, burgundy tie, and Italian leather shoes. Everything about him suggested success and sophistication. Jennifer Morrison, the hotel's general manager, spotted him from behind the front desk, and something in her expression changed. She put down the paper she was holding and started walking toward him with purpose, her jaw tight, her shoulders squared. What this manager didn't know was that she had just made the worst mistake of her entire career. One decision that would cost her everything she had worked for, expose a pattern of behavior hidden for years, and trigger a corporate investigation that would reach the highest levels of one of America's largest hotel chains. The cameras were rolling, multiple guests were watching, and Jennifer Morrison was about to destroy her own life in less than 10 minutes. Before we continue, where are you watching this from? Drop your country or city in the comments below. And if you're new here, please hit that subscribe button. This story gets even more intense, and stories like these need to be heard. Marcus Bennett had built an empire. Starting with a single boutique hotel in Atlanta 28 years ago, he had grown his company, Bennett Hospitality Group, into one of the most respected names in the industry. His portfolio included 47 hotels across 12 states, employing over 8,000 people. Forbes had profiled him twice. Black Enterprise named him Entrepreneur of the Year in 2019. He served on the boards of 3 major charities and had donated millions to scholarship programs for hospitality students. But Marcus never forgot where he came from. He grew up in the south side of Chicago, the son of a janitor and a school cafeteria worker. He put himself through college working night shifts at hotel front desks. He knew every job in the hotel business because he had done every job in the hotel business. He still made it a point to visit his properties unannounced, sometimes staying as a regular guest, sometimes walking through back-of-house areas to see how things really ran when corporate wasn't watching. That morning, Marcus had one simple goal: meet his daughter Lauren for lunch. She was a lawyer at a firm 2 blocks away, and they tried to have lunch together at least once a month when he was in Chicago. He had arrived early and decided to wait in the lobby rather than going up to his room. Simple, normal, forgettable. What happened next should never have happened at all. Not in any hotel, and certainly not in one that bore his company's name. Jennifer Morrison approached him near the fireplace. She didn't greet him properly or ask if he needed assistance. Instead, she demanded to see his room key card. Marcus looked up from his phone, confused but calm. He asked if there was a problem. She didn't really answer. Instead, she repeated that she needed to see proof he was a registered guest. He told her he was waiting for someone and would be meeting them for lunch shortly. She asked who he was waiting for. He answered politely that he was meeting his daughter, though he was starting to understand what was happening. Around them, other people sat in the lobby freely. A young white man in jeans and a hoodie occupied another chair, working on a laptop. An elderly white woman with shopping bags sat nearby, and Morrison had walked right past both of them without a second glance. Marcus noticed this. After 3 decades in the hospitality industry, he had learned to notice everything. Morrison's tone grew sharper. She told him that loitering was not permitted, and he needed to either prove he was a guest or leave the property immediately. Marcus remained calm. He explained that he had checked in the night before, and his room key was upstairs in his suite. He was simply waiting in a public area of the hotel, which was perfectly acceptable. She crossed her arms. That wasn't good enough, she said. Too many people tried to use hotel facilities without being guests. She needed verification right now. Marcus asked to speak with her supervisor. That question seemed to irritate her further. She informed him that she was the general manager and didn't need to justify hotel policies to anyone. Then Morrison asked the question that told Marcus everything he needed to know about why he had been approached. "Are you sure you have the right hotel? Maybe you're confused about where you're staying." The implication hung in the air like an accusation. The meaning was crystal clear and absolutely insulting. Marcus pulled out his phone and opened his email to show her his reservation confirmation. Morrison barely glanced at it before claiming email confirmations could be faked. She demanded he go upstairs and retrieve his physical room key, or she would have security escort him out. This was completely unreasonable. No hotel policy requires guests to carry their room keys at all times while on property. Many guests leave keys in their rooms while using hotel facilities. Morrison was inventing requirements on the spot. Quick question for you all. Have you or someone you know ever been accused of not belonging somewhere you had every right to be? Type yes if you have. Marcus could have gone upstairs to get his key. It would have taken 3 minutes. But he understood what was really happening here, and he also understood that giving in to unreasonable demands only encouraged more of the same behavior. He calmly informed Morrison that he was a registered guest, that he had a legal right to be in the public areas of the hotel, and that he would not be going anywhere. Morrison's face flushed. She told him that if he refused to comply, she would call the police and have him removed for trespassing. Marcus suggested she might want to reconsider that decision. She asked if that was a threat. He told her it was advice. 2 guests near the concierge desk had stopped what they were doing to watch the confrontation unfold. A businessman with a rolling suitcase stood frozen, staring at the scene. A woman in business attire pulled out her phone and started recording. Morrison raised her voice, demanding again that he leave immediately. Other guests in the lobby turned to look. The front desk staff exchanged uncomfortable glances. Everyone could see this was wrong, but nobody seemed willing to intervene. Marcus kept his hands visible and his voice steady. He stated clearly that he was not trespassing, that he was a registered guest, and that her demand for him to leave was unreasonable and discriminatory. The word discriminatory seemed to trigger something in Morrison. She told him not to play that card with her. She insisted this had nothing to do with race and everything to do with security protocols. But her own behavior contradicted that claim. She had approached no one else in the lobby. She had demanded credentials from no one else. The only person she saw as a security threat was the well-dressed black man sitting quietly by the fireplace. Morrison pulled out her phone and dialed. She was calling the police. She announced loudly enough for everyone in the lobby to hear. Marcus told her she was making a serious mistake. She ignored him. This was her second massive mistake, and the consequences were already piling up. While Morrison spoke to dispatch, 3 more guests took out their phones to record. The front desk associate, a young man named Kyle, looked like he wanted to say something but seemed afraid to contradict his boss. The concierge, an older woman named Patricia, had worked at the hotel for 11 years. She recognized that something was terribly wrong with this situation. Morrison reported to dispatch that she had a person refusing to leave the property after being asked multiple times. She claimed he was becoming aggressive and threatening staff. Anyone watching the video footage or listening to the witnesses could see this was completely false. Marcus had remained seated and calm from the very first moment. 2 Chicago police officers arrived within 8 minutes. Officers David Chen and Maria Rodriguez walked into the lobby having no idea what kind of situation they were actually walking into. Morrison immediately approached them with her version of events. She painted Marcus as belligerent, uncooperative, and potentially dangerous. She wanted him removed from the property immediately. But when the officers looked at the scene, something didn't add up. The man Morrison was describing as threatening sat calmly in an armchair, hands folded, wearing an expensive suit. His demeanor was professional and composed. This didn't match the description they had received. Officer Rodriguez was experienced enough to spot inconsistencies immediately. She asked Morrison the obvious question. Had she actually verified whether this man was a registered guest? Morrison claimed she had asked for proof, and he had refused to provide it. Rodriguez asked Marcus if that was accurate. Marcus calmly explained that he had offered to show his email confirmation, but Morrison had rejected it and demanded he retrieve his physical room key from upstairs, which was not a standard hotel requirement. That explanation made sense to Rodriguez. She had stayed in dozens of hotels and knew that guests weren't required to carry room keys with them at all times while on property. Chen asked Morrison what initially prompted her to approach this particular person. Morrison stumbled over her words, mentioning something about security protocols and unregistered guests. Rodriguez glanced at Chen. The look they exchanged said everything. They both knew this situation had gone completely wrong. Do you think police body cameras help protect both officers and civilians? Let us know in the comments. Rodriguez suggested they verify the guest registration directly with the front desk. Morrison seemed reluctant, but agreed. Kyle, the front desk associate, looked relieved to finally be involved. He pulled up the hotel system and searched for the reservation. His face changed as he read the screen. He looked at Morrison, then at Marcus, then back at Morrison again. He appeared to be trying to decide whether to say something or stay silent. Rodriguez noticed his hesitation and asked directly if there was a reservation for this guest. Kyle nodded slowly and confirmed that yes, there was a reservation. Rodriguez asked for the name. Kyle's voice was quiet when he answered. Marcus Bennett. The reservation is in the presidential suite. Morrison's expression flickered with confusion. Something about that name seemed familiar to her, but she couldn't quite place it. Rodriguez asked Marcus to confirm his full name. He did. Then she asked him one more question, though she was starting to suspect she already knew the answer. Mr. Bennett, what brings you to Chicago? Marcus's response was calm and measured. I'm here on business. I own the company that owns this hotel. I'm the CEO of Bennett Hospitality Group. The color drained from Jennifer Morrison's face. For a long moment, she just stood there as the reality of what she had done started to sink in. She had confronted the owner of the entire hotel chain. She had accused him of trespassing in his own property. She had called the police on the man who employed over 8,000 people, including her, and all of it was recorded on hotel security cameras and guests' phones. Her career was over, and somewhere in her mind, Morrison had to know it. But instead of immediately apologizing and trying to salvage any shred of dignity, Morrison made it worse. She stammered something about just following standard procedures and not knowing who he was. She said if he had just shown his room key, none of this would have happened. Marcus's response was quiet but firm. He had offered multiple forms of verification. She had rejected all of them. She had never asked for his name. She had never checked the reservation system herself. She had simply decided he didn't belong and escalated until police arrived. Rodriguez had seen enough. She turned to Morrison and suggested this situation needed to end right now. There was clearly no crime being committed, no trespassing occurring, and no reason for police to be involved. Patricia, the concierge who had been watching the entire incident, finally spoke up. She had recognized Marcus the moment he walked into the hotel the night before. She had wanted to say something earlier, but Morrison was her supervisor, and she had been afraid of the consequences. Now she felt she had to speak. She confirmed that Mr. Bennett had checked in personally yesterday evening and had been nothing but polite to everyone he encountered. The lobby had filled with more people during the commotion. About 20 guests and staff members had witnessed some or all of what happened. Many were recording. All were watching a manager's career implode in real time. Marcus didn't gloat or make a scene. He thanked the officers for their professionalism in handling the situation. He asked for their names and badge numbers, which they provided without hesitation. Then he took out his phone and started photographing the scene and writing down details. He was documenting everything methodically. Morrison could only stand there and watch as he gathered the information he would need for what came next. The videos hit the internet within 2 hours. Multiple guests posted their footage to social media with detailed accounts of what they had witnessed. A successful black businessman targeted, harassed, and threatened with arrest in his own hotel by his own employee. The story was impossible to ignore. By dinner time, the videos had hundreds of thousands of views. By the next morning, they had millions. National news outlets picked up the story immediately. The CEO of a major hotel chain racially profiled in his own property. The optics couldn't have been worse for Bennett Hospitality Group, even though Marcus was the victim. Type "justice" in the comments if you think Morrison got exactly what she deserved. Jennifer Morrison's employment history came out quickly after that. Corporate HR records showed this wasn't her first incident. 3 previous complaints had been filed against her over 4 years for similar behavior. All 3 involved black guests or employees. One was from a black wedding coordinator, who Morrison had questioned about whether she was authorized to be setting up in the ballroom. Another was from a black business traveler who Morrison had accused of not paying for room service he had legitimately ordered. The hotel had documented these complaints but taken only minimal action. Morrison received verbal warnings and completed a single diversity training session. She was never suspended, demoted, or seriously disciplined. That failure of oversight allowed the behavior to continue until she finally targeted someone who couldn't be dismissed or ignored. More people came forward. After the news broke, former staff members who had worked under Morrison found their voices. A black front desk associate described being constantly questioned about her decisions and micromanaged in ways her white colleagues weren't. A black maintenance worker reported that Morrison frequently implied he must have taken master keys without authorization whenever something went missing. The stories painted a clear picture of someone who had been allowed to operate with bias for years. Marcus gave one interview to CNN. He was measured and thoughtful, exactly what you would expect from someone in his position. He explained that he didn't want this to become solely about him. Yes, what happened to him was wrong and humiliating. But the real issue was systemic. If this could happen to the CEO of the company, what happened to regular guests who didn't have his resources or authority? He talked about the frustration of being presumed guilty of trespassing while sitting quietly in a lobby, the anger of having police called on him for the crime of existing, while black in a space where others assumed he didn't belong. The calculation he had to make in that moment: comply with unreasonable demands to keep himself safe, or stand his ground and risk escalation. The interview resonated because Marcus didn't perform outrage. He simply told the truth and called for meaningful change. Jennifer Morrison was terminated 3 days after the incident. The termination letter cited multiple policy violations, including discriminatory conduct, harassment, filing false police reports, and creating a hostile environment for guests and staff. But her employment termination was just the beginning of the consequences she would face. Marcus filed a federal lawsuit against Morrison personally for violating his civil rights. The complaint detailed not just the March 17th incident, but the pattern of discriminatory behavior Morrison had exhibited throughout her employment. It included testimony from the other complainants and documented how the company's inadequate response had enabled her actions. The lawsuit sought compensatory and punitive damages. Morrison's attorney tried to argue that she had acted in good faith based on what she believed were legitimate security concerns. That defense collapsed when the video evidence and witness testimony showed she had approached no other lobby guests and had applied her supposed security protocols selectively. Expert witnesses testified about implicit bias and how Morrison's behavior fit textbook patterns of racial profiling. Statistical analysis of her employment record showed she had filed disproportionate incident reports involving black guests and had disciplined black staff members at rates far higher than their representation in the workforce. The trial took place 9 months later. The evidence was overwhelming. Security footage, body camera video from the responding officers, testimony from multiple witnesses, and Morrison's own documented history of complaints. Stay with me, because justice is coming. Subscribe so more people can see stories like this. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours. They found Morrison liable on all counts. The verdict awarded Marcus $250,000 in compensatory damages for emotional distress and violation of civil rights, $2 million in punitive damages designed to punish discriminatory conduct and deter similar behavior. The judgment would follow Morrison for the rest of her life. At 43 years old, she faced financial ruin. Her career in hospitality was finished. No hotel, restaurant, or customer-facing business would hire someone with her legal record. She would have to file for bankruptcy and start over in an entirely different field, forever marked by her own discriminatory choices. Additionally, the state of Illinois filed criminal charges for filing a false police report. Making intentionally false statements to police to cause someone to be arrested is a Class A misdemeanor in Illinois, carrying up to 1 year in jail and fines up to $2,500. Morrison pleaded guilty to avoid trial. She was sentenced to 6 months in county jail, 200 hours of community service, and 2 years of probation. She was also ordered to complete an intensive 40-hour program on civil rights and implicit bias. For someone who had built her identity around being a hospitality professional, this represented the complete destruction of everything she had worked for. Jennifer Morrison lost more than her job and her money. Her reputation was destroyed permanently. A simple Google search of her name returned thousands of results detailing what she had done. Future employers, potential romantic partners, casual acquaintances, anyone who searched for her would immediately find the videos and news coverage. Her friends distanced themselves. Former colleagues deleted her from social media. She had to move to a different city because the recognition and shame in Chicago became unbearable. The incident defined her identity in a way nothing ever would again. These weren't consequences Marcus wished on her, but they were the natural results of her own documented choices over years of employment. The incident triggered comprehensive changes at Bennett Hospitality Group. Marcus used his own company's failure as a catalyst for industry-leading reforms. Implementation of mandatory quarterly bias training for all staff and management. Creation of an independent third-party hotline for reporting discrimination. Policy requiring corporate investigation of any manager with multiple discrimination complaints. Mandatory body cameras for all security personnel. Regular audits of incident reports to identify problematic patterns. Financial penalties for managers who fail to address discrimination complaints appropriately. These changes cost the company millions to implement, but Marcus considered them essential. He also established a $5 million scholarship fund for hospitality students from underrepresented communities. 3 regional managers who had received but not adequately addressed previous complaints about Morrison also faced consequences. 1 was demoted. 2 were reassigned to non-supervisory roles. Bennett Hospitality Group made clear that failure to address discrimination would end careers at every level. The hotel industry as a whole paid attention. The American Hotel and Lodging Association released new guidance on preventing racial profiling. Multiple chains updated their policies. Industry conferences featured panels on implicit bias and inclusive hospitality. One incident in one lobby on one morning created ripples that reached across an entire industry. The story of what happened at the Grandview Plaza Hotel is about more than one biased manager targeting one successful businessman. It's about assumptions, privilege, and who gets to occupy space without justification. Marcus Bennett had everything society claims determines whether you belong: wealth, success, education, professional achievement. He wore expensive clothes and carried himself with the confidence of someone who had earned his status. None of it protected him from being treated as a criminal in his own hotel. If someone with his credentials and authority wasn't safe from racial profiling, then the problem clearly wasn't about individual qualifications. The problem was about who gets presumed to belong and who gets presumed to be a threat based solely on their appearance. Marcus explained in interviews that he didn't think Jennifer Morrison woke up that morning planning to be racist. He believed her biases were likely unconscious, the product of years of societal messaging about who belongs in certain spaces. But unconscious bias causes real harm. Intent doesn't erase impact. The recording of the incident served as undeniable proof of what countless people experience regularly without documentation. How many similar confrontations happened in hotel lobbies, department stores, apartment buildings, and office spaces every day without being recorded? How many people were forced to justify their presence in places they had every right to be? For anyone watching who might face similar situations, Marcus offered practical advice. Document everything if possible. Get witnesses. State your rights clearly. Follow up formally in writing. And know that you're not fighting just for yourself, but for everyone who comes after you. Jennifer Morrison made a choice that March morning. She saw Marcus Bennett and decided he didn't belong. She thought she had the power and he had none. She thought she could harass him and face no consequences. She was wrong about all of it. And that mistake cost her everything while sending a message that resonated far beyond one Chicago hotel. Justice isn't always swift or certain. But sometimes when evidence is clear and people refuse to stay silent, justice does come. And that's exactly what happened here. Closing. Thank you for watching until the end. Make sure you're subscribed for more stories that matter. What was the most shocking part of this story for you? Let me know in the comments below.